Hello, everyone. So in this podcast, I bring another Tapeconian employee to the podcast. So this is the third time I've done this, but bringing in Mary Sennett, quality and compliance manager at Tapecon. She's got a large responsibility overseeing our quality management system, among other types of compliance standards um, oversight. So Mary and I talk about our bunch of things in quality, but process validation. We really hone in on the process of process validation, the stages and the requirements of that process. We touch on traceability and then just really do a kind of a broad brush overview of some of the standards that we deal with from a compliance standpoint here in the Tapecon facility. So hope you find this valuable. And without further ado, bringing you Mary Sennett from Tapecon. Thanks, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Better Product Solutions podcast. And this is Steve Davis, president of Tapecon, with you again. And we're doing another episode where I'm bringing in a Tapeconian to the show and to get some perspective. And so I'm happy to have Mary Sennett here on the podcast, who's our quality and compliance manager. Mary, I'll let you introduce yourself, but how long have you been with us? I'm trying to, like 2012. I don't even, I'd have to think about that. But I guess,
Oh,
Mary, can you maybe introduce yourself, talk about your role at Tapecon, and then we'll get into some compliance stuff.
hi, I'm Mary Sennett. I'm the Quality and Compliance Manager here at Tapecon, and I've been here. I think I'm going into my ninth year. It doesn't feel like it could be 9 years, but at the same time, it does feel like it's 9 years. You know how that is, and it's been just a really great experience because I really think that I've seen the company really grow in so many ways in the time that I've been here, and it's given me opportunities to grow too.
There you
So.
go. And I remember, well, I think that, when you came in the organization, we used to have two facilities, one in Rochester, one in Buffalo, and we had kind of two different quality management systems. And so you were really instrumental, I'd say, of bringing them together and putting things, I guess, in a better place, and particularly in our high compliance stuff, which is really where I wanted to go and talk about, I guess, from a brand owner perspective, someone who's commercializing a product who is dealing, say, with a life sciences product or other compliance implications with the product, particularly when we bring in opportunities and we have to do process validations and do, I guess I'll let you go into more detail, but can you talk about, I guess, when opportunities come in the door, what really triggers our compliance system to really kind of kick into gear when it comes to validating a production process, and maybe put it in the perspective of where we sit in the ecosystem of our brand owner customer in the manufacturing stages?
Okay. Well, as mainly a contract manufacturer, our customers are depending on us to basically understand the market that they're in and what the requirements are for those market. There's expectations from their customers and there's expectations from regulatory organizations like the FDA. And by understanding what's needed and being able to support them through that phase, it's just a value added for them. So, a lot of times the customers will have their own validation process and will participate in that. And our quality management system is written to allow that. Sometimes the customer will depend on us to go ahead and do the validation. Sometimes they'll ask about it and sometimes they won't. But when it comes up, they can be dependent that we've done it and we've done it in a 1390, excuse me, 13 in an ISO compliant and
13485.
FDA 13485 and an ISO compliant FDA compliant manner. We followed, your quality management system requirements that are pretty much harmonized throughout industry.
And it matters. I mean, there's medical and there's non-medical. And how do we, I mean, when things come in the door, there's a big distinguishment between what is medical versus non-medical. And so how do you, when you think of those two coming in the door, what's different on the handling of something that's medical versus how we would handle something that's non-medical?
I don't really see a large difference between that. I think it's important that even though we follow, the standard 9001 quality system and the medical device directives, that we treat everything within our quality management system pretty much the same. It's going to cut down on confusion here, and a best practice is a best practice. So, if it's something that's going into an important product line, a compliant, something that's compliant, or the customer just needs good quality from us, it's all the same. And we need to follow the steps. And of course, these steps are, what's appropriate to the final intended use of that product as far as the level of documentation and the level of testing. But it's always important, and it's always important that we assess what's appropriate for this particular product or component that we're going to be making for the customer.
Let's talk more about the documentation. So I mentioned process validation before. Can you, I guess, walk through what what a process validation is, and I guess what we do in terms of the documentation that is produced when we do process validation that ends up being valuable to the customer?
Yeah, well, I think the whole thing can be valuable to the customer in the long run. So basically, when the customer comes to us with an opportunity, we're going to take a look and we're going to say, well, where are we as far as the ability to go ahead and make this product? We could start all the way at our design qualification phase, which is where we're looking at equipment or a modification to a piece of equipment. From there, we're going to go into, when necessary, an installation qualification. Once again, are we putting in a new piece of equipment? Are we modifying a piece of equipment in order to, make this new product? Then, from there, you're into the OQ, and the OQ is where we normally are going to pick up. We normally have the design qualification. We normally have the IQ done. Actually, there's an IQ for everything we have in place. So there's not very seldom a need to actually go that far back. So we're going to start with the operation qualification, which is basically where we're going to, engineering and operations are going to get together with quality. We're going to determine what appropriate sample plans are, and we've kind of combinations we're going to run on press. Everything from speeds to settings to material size, and basically we're just going to do experiments until we come up with a good, reliable product, and then we're going to have the settings around it. If we run the press with this setting, if we do this, we are pretty confident, um, very confident that we're going to get good product every time. And then, of course, it depends on what, we might put some in-process testing in place to continue to confirm as a product and or process control. And of course, everything goes through 100% inspection, at least a visual inspection during production. So the output of that operation qualification is going to be your finalized drawings, your work instructions, any press sheets as far as settings that are going to be needed to be repeatable on that product. At that point, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into our process qualification, PQ, and we're going to run the product a few times through. We're going to basically ensure that the operators are trained. They can take the documentation we've created. They can set up the press per what the OQ defined, and that we're going to continue to get reliable product no matter who's running it and when they're running it.
And this whole IQ, OQ, PQ, and of course, anybody who's listening to this who's in the medical device world is very familiar with IQ, OQ, PQ. And can you speak to, because I know we're doing a lot of class one single-use disposable medical device applications. At least we have a QMS built to handle that.
Yeah.
What, by us having, and I'll also just say that, over the past decade, the adoption of just strengthening our company's understanding of how to properly do process validation, which you've had obviously a very large contribution to improving our company at. There's your kudos. I mean, it's become kind of it's just become standard practice around here now. But
Right.
from the brand owner, the person who's trying to commercialize a product standpoint, how does that, by having a partner that understands process validation, how does that accelerate whatever they need to do to get a product to market in terms of, what check boxes that check in that FDA process so that it gets them speed to market?
Yeah, whatever their design process is, whether they're following a phase gate or a stage gate, by us understanding what they're talking about when they say, hey, we're going to run through, we need these samples, we're going to run through this testing, we're going to try this, we're going to try this, or we're going to try three different materials. And by us saying, okay, we understand that is, and we understand what we need to do, and we're going to be able to support you by supplying the appropriate documentation. You're not going to have to come back to us and say, oh, hey, that was a really nice email you sent, but can I please have data in a form? We're going to have that. And, it's going to be just automatic for us. And if they didn't ask for it right off the bat, if somebody comes back, 6 months later, a year later, we're going to have that information. We're going to be able to supply it. And that just can be a huge support, especially if someone runs into, where they're in an audit or, they're trying to do some investigation on their product. The fact that we've got that information and, as a result of whatever we did as an output of our OQ and PQ, we continue to track the critical appropriate information for that product and contain, traceability throughout our process as an once again, as an output of what we defined as the requirement for those products. um, it's just a tremendous service to the customer that they can get that information because as being on the other end of things, when I've gone back and said, okay, well, where did this come from, or what happened here, or where's the testing for this, and when you can't get it, through the supply chain, it can be awfully painful.
Mhm. I'm glad you mentioned traceability because the whole IQ, OQ, is usually like when it's a new product launch or maybe a significant change. But in staying on the vein of, I guess, higher compliance kind of requirements, even though I know we pretty much have traceability everywhere, but can you speak to what do what do we do in terms of ensuring traceability in our process that I guess our customers, I guess, appreciate that we do that because it reduces their risks?
Right. Once again, dependent on the final application and the customer's requirements. But if we need to have traceability back to the raw material and even a batch or a subset within a lot of raw material, we're going to have that. We're going to know what where we used it in our process, and we're going to know where it landed in their final product. So we can take it all the way back, including, who ran it in our process, what days it was run on, and what testing was done or inspection was done. It's all right there. So you can take the raw material, and this raw material came from this very specific batch, and it ended up right here in your final roll that arrived fully labeled in your factory. And if you call Tapecon and you say, I need to know something about this roll, we can go get that information, and we can go get that information fairly quickly.
Well, because we're in a multi I mean, what makes our industry unique is you've got a multi-material process happening at all the time. I mean, obviously, we're using additive print type technologies and printing layers. So you've got the chemistry kind of the chemistry layer. All the different substrates in a complex converting process can be multiple webs of material handling coming in, and then the unit of measure headache, right? Because you've got things coming in either square inches or rolls or linear feet or I mean, how do you square all that up and then make sure that the documentation actually have traceability and how far back does that even go up the supply chain, you know?
It depends. I mean, we might say that we track things by a roll at a time. We might say, okay, well, these are how these four rolls are going to go through the system, or this is each pallet is going to have this information. And it's going to depend on a few things. Did the lot change or something significant change about one of the input materials? Well, at that point, we're going to know where that changed, and we're going to carry that change through as far as our documentation. We'll change our lot where necessary. Um, so it can get really complicated, but we're willing to do what's needed to maintain that information, and our operators are trained on that, and they're used to it, to the point where we say, okay, well, this doesn't really need that level. People will question, gee, why aren't we keeping that level of information? And it's, well, the intended use of this product doesn't, it's not a requirement for it. It's not a medical device. It's not this, it's not that. So, but we're just so used to that level. Now, that said, we do have a minimum traceability where we know what a received lot of material of any supplied raw material, we know where that's used in within our lots of product.
Mhm.
That's at our very minimum.
Yeah, right. And so taking a step back, I mean, can you go through all of the different compliance standards that we comply to? Because we serve a lot of different customers in a lot of different markets, right? So
Yeah.
what are all the different types of compliance implications that we have to comply to that kind of run across your desk that we just always have to have, answers to?
Well, definitely ISO 9001 and 1345, depending on the industry. Um, Part 820 of the FDA, Part
Mhm.
11 of the FDA as far as software compliance and validation. We run into ITAR, which is basically security of classified material. That comes up quite a bit. Let me see, what else? And we just follow CGMP, which is good manufacturing practices, current good manufacturing practices. And that really does cover you in a lot of different industries. It's very specific to medical, but if you're covering that, you're going to meet what aerospace is looking for. You're going to meet what automotive is looking for. You're going to meet what food is looking for.
Yep. I had written down four more. I was going to ask you to comment. Reach, RoHS, a CFC, COVA. What about those? What are all those
Okay.
acronyms?
Yeah. So REACH and RoHS, those are regulatory, statutory out of Europe, and they have to do with content of your product and the raw materials, basically for sustainability initiatives. And so basically what we need to do is we need to confirm that the raw materials that we're purchasing meet those requirements, that basically they don't contain certain chemicals, metals, things like that, and that we don't then add something to them that would knock them out of compliance for that. Um, ASTM specs come to mind. An ASTM spec is basically it's a test, usually that's been performed on some product, some raw material, that's confirming that that raw material meets a specification for some sort of performance. So customers will also often spec in, ASTM, 555, and we will make sure that we have it throughout our entire system, that we are going to purchase material that meets that ASTM specification. We're going to confirm that only that material can be used in the product. And then, yeah, we're going to issue a certificate of conformance to the customer. And we're going to state we used this lot of raw material that met these ASTM requirements. Here's the test results if you need them. And that goes back to the traceability. It's all there.
Mhm. Yeah, and as you're talking about the Reach, RoHS, and just the last thing a brand owner is going to want to do is realize that there's a problem with those raw materials too far down the road, right? So early
Right.
consultancy of that material set is probably a good thing. I just want to make that comment. As far as
Yeah.
testing, quality testing, what type of test services do we have as part of any type of shipments or things like that? Do we do any type of special testing, or what? How do you see our quality team servicing our customers in terms of testing services?
Okay. So, well, we do a lot of measurements because we're often creating, making parts for customers that they need to fit. They need to just fit just right. Maybe there's a UL specification or some performance specification. We do pull testing to confirm that product has, you mentioned before that we bring a lot of products together. Well, we do pull testing to make sure that they're not coming apart. Um, and there's, of course, 100% inspection on everything as far as a visual inspection, whether that's by human eye and more often now via a camera system.
Mhm. Yep. No, for sure. Big roadmap on technology investments in camera inspection to automate, the human eye, which isn't always reliable. So,
True.
No, that's good. I mean, that was kind of through my list. I mean, I feel like I could go down 10 different rabbit holes of compliance in terms of, regulatory trends. You mentioned sustainability. I think that could be a podcast in itself,
Yeah.
on sustainability. I might have to bring you back on because for those listening, Mary's involved on our local Western New York Sustainable Roundtable. She was on the board, and we're doing some things in sustainable materials, but there's a whole bunch of compliance implications behind that. Maybe not, definitely from a material set relevant to our customers, but there's a lot of things that go there. I don't know, Mary, that's kind of all I had. Is there any other comments that you want to make in general about, I don't know, quality in general in terms of our production process or quality and how it's relevant to anybody listening that's trying to either make a product or commercialize or improve a product?
Yeah, I think quality has come to mean one of the key components of it is a process approach. And I think that quality has moved from that, standalone kind of department of the police department within companies to, more of integrated practices throughout the company. And I just really feel, and I've always felt since I began in manufacturing some 25 years ago, just how critical is that things are made right and that everybody can have the assurance that it was made right, it's going to work and it's going to work in its intended use. And it's something that affects all of us, every day. We all use some form of medical device almost every day, or we know somebody who is under medical care. And it's just this feeling of you know, um, adding value to everything around you. The fact that, meaningful work, that you're part of making sure that you're not just making something, but when you make this thing, it is adding value to people's lives and it is going to work for them when they need it to work.
Yeah. And it's like you think about like this DFM, DFS, DFT, this design for manufacturing, design for supply chain in that early stage thinking. But a lot of people, I'm not saying they forget about it, but design for test is a big thing, like asking those questions early. And of course, spoken like a true quality professional to really say the assurance word, quality assurance, not quality control. Because, yeah, I mean, just having end of line inspection is not, it's not going
It's
to get
never going to
where
get
you
you
need it.
quality.
It's not going to get
It's
you quality, right?
it's still important sometimes and it's still necessary. But no, if you don't make it in your process and your outputs weren't quality products, you're not going to inspect it in.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to happen,
It's not
right?
going to happen.
So it starts far upstream from there.
All right. Well, Mary, I appreciate you getting on. I know it's not easy to just get thrown on a podcast because it's not something you do every day. So I know you got warmed up as we got going. So that's good. And I appreciate you being on. Is there anything you want to add before we kind of wrap up?
No, I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, Mary, our quality and compliance manager. Thanks for coming on. I think that's employee number 3. Let's see. We had Dave on, then we had Raphael on. I think it's your employee 3 on the podcast. So I'll try to every now and again keep sprinkling in different functions within the Tapecon organization to mix it up. So thanks, Mary, and I will see you around the land of Tapecon. So thanks
All
very much.
right. Thanks, Steve.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye.
The Better Products Podcast is about educating product teams about new materials and new technologies, all in the custom material converting and printed electronic space to help them design and build better products. So, in this podcast, I'm hoping to give wide ranging conversations with various people throughout the industry and just bring a lot of good content to the table. So, if you're interested in learning more about the industry, materials, processes, how to improve products if you're on a product team, or just general know how of what the heck is going on in this industry, then subscribe to the podcast and get ready for some more really good episodes as I bring in some great guests. Thanks.